And most of you didn't see the terrific screen that Scott had up there. Nobody was on. The welcoming screen with the OPA stuff there. There it is. Thank you, Scott. That's pretty cool, I think, isn't it? So OPA, as it says there, stands for Organic Products Associates. And for those of you in OPA, you probably know all the details. For those of you not in OPA, you may, but I'm just going to briefly review them. Many years ago, Mary and Gary Loomis, who started the organization, the Loomis organization, as it grew, Mary had the vision that this would be something much bigger than just Mary and Gary Loomis. So she wanted to sort of develop a name, a brand, whatever you want to call it. And she called it Organic Products Associates, or OPA for short. And then anybody who was part of the Loomis organization, now known as the OPA, Organic Products Association, could use that if they chose to. And over the years, the OPA has grown to be one of the largest organizations in Shaklee. There are approximately, I think, 10 master coordinators in the organization. And after Mary and Gary passed on, they left the business to their son, who was going to manage and take over it, Rob Loomis, William Loomis, affectionately known as Rob. And Rob is from the Boston area and the Maine area, and he manages the OPA organization today. And among the various things that the OPA organization does is every month we have a call like this, the OPA call, second Monday of the month, and one of the 10 master coordinators usually runs that call. And it's our privilege and opportunity to run the call tonight. So formally welcome, everybody. And we are very excited with our speaker tonight. Some of you may have heard him previously, but I know his message is going to be a little bit different from what you've previously heard before. And I'm going to let him tell most of his story, to introduce himself. But briefly, he was prior to Shaklee, he was in, I guess we could call it medical sales. He was the kind of guy that went into the operating room with the doctors and basically told them what to do, how to take care of this machine that they were going to implant or whatever. I thought that was pretty cool. And he had work hours, you start when you're a surgeon, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Wow. Now he's in retirement. He gets up at 8 o'clock probably. He probably still gets up early. But he's from New Hampshire now. Grew up in Minnesota. His parents, Les and Allie Palmer, a most wonderful, warm couple. We had the privilege of meeting them and knowing them. In fact, we spoke for them, visited them in Minneapolis. And I think from what I've learned of Scott in the last couple of years I've known him, he's carrying on that Palmer legacy extremely well. So Scott, take it away. We're really excited to have you on.
What's up, OPA? Alan, Hannah, nice to see you. Nice to see everybody on this call. It's an honor to be here. And as Alan pointed out, I am a second generation Shaklee person. So I was a Shaklee kid. And so like many next generation Shaklee people, and I'll share my screen in a second. I have some slides to show you, but I thought we would just talk for a couple minutes here first. So yeah, as many next generation Shaklee people, we've lived a life of a Shaklee kid. Then we made a transition after college into our own job, our own occupation, whatever it is. In my case, as Alan said, I grew up in Minneapolis, and my mom, who had 3 young children at home, often sick, was an overworked nurse, drove into the city of Minneapolis every day early, left her kids behind, and hated doing that. And when my Aunt Edith introduced Allie Palmer to Shaklee, she thought, well, this is an opportunity to make my kids healthy. And so we all became healthy. We all started to thrive in school and in sports. I was a high school and college athlete, and we all had, tremendous health experience with Shackley. And that meant a lot to my mom. And then my dad caught kind of the Shackley finance bug, the wealth opportunity, when he attended a Bob Hoker meeting. And Bob Hoker said, well, how many people in this audience have Shackley bonus cars? Everybody raised their hand, and he's like, wow, if that guy can have it, so can I. I know I can earn one. So he kind of caught that opportunity bug. And so the two of them worked it together and loved it so much they became lifetime master coordinators in the mid 80s. And so I went off to college, got my feet wet in the corporate world, and moved to Boston. When I got married, I married a Boston girl. I was living in New York City, and I got a job in the medical device world selling staplers, surgical staplers, and devices in the operating room. And so when I went to sales training, they said Johnson & Johnson was the company. They said, whatever you do, don't date any coworkers. We don't allow dating here at Johnson & Johnson. So I met this cute brunette who was my sales trainer. Very taboo. You did not want to date a coworker, much less your sales trainer. And now she's my wife of 30 years. Now we have 2 kids in college. So it's funny how the life cycle moves along. But so fast forward, I had a business. So I got into medical device sales. And as I moved up the corporate ladder, I was given an opportunity to open up my own business. And so I owned a distributorship selling for orthopedics and neurosurgery. And so in that time frame, probably about 30 years in that business, I probably spent about 3,000 days in the operating room. I estimate I covered about 3,000 surgeries, mainly spine surgery. So if you've ever known anybody that has had any type of spinal fusion, I've been in just about every spinal surgery there is, all the way from the sacrum, which is the base of the skull, down to the occiput down to the sacrum. The sacrum is your tailbone. Occiput is the base of your skull. And so that was a really interesting experience. And I really chalk up a lot of my success in the business world to my Shackley upbringing, because I grew up listening to motivational tapes. I grew up listening to opportunities and dreams and motivation. And I think that was a very fortunate opportunity for me, because when I got out into the real world, I knew the language of business. And so I just think I was, a fortunate person of the opportunity, the experience that I had. So with that, I'll get into the talk tonight. So I just thought I would talk about the next generation Shackley leaders. So what's important for next generation leaders? So all of you on this call know somebody in your organization or maybe even in your own family that might be a next generation Shackley leader. So I thought I would give you the perspective of one, because what do we look for? Well, with hyperinflation, with high cost of living, in my case, kids' college tuition, there's a big need for money. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first thing we need is to be able to survive, right? Clothing, food, shelter. We have to have money. That's just the most important part of any business. It's the starting point, at least. But once you have the money, it's not the most important thing anymore. What's really important is your health, because I knew a lot of people in my other business that had money, but they didn't have health. They had poor health, often taking a lot of drugs, having a lot of sickness. And so health is a real important part of what we want as next generation. We also want personal improvement. We all want to be improving our skills, working on our craft. And next generation people, really in my kids' generation, millennials, Gen Z, they want companies that are ESG friendly, environmental, social governance. They want companies that take care of the planet. Shackley's Shaklee has a rich history in taking care of the environment. And that's a really important box to check, especially among young people. And then last thing, dreams. We all want to be able to live out our dream. What is our dream life? And so, I like the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, Robert Kiyosaki. He talks about the cash flow quadrant. And when you look at these quadrants, you see the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, the investor. I started out my career as an employee. Then I went to self-employed. And, I loved, being in that business. It was real interesting going into surgery and dealing with surgeons. It was an interesting clientele, very challenging environment. But there was a downside. I only earned money when I was working. When I was in surgery was the only time I was working money. It was the only time I was earning money. In this upper right quadrant, the business owner or the investor, that's when you leverage other people in your business. So you are not doing all the work. And that's when you create asset income and portfolio income. And so, as I look at Shaklee and what might appeal to other business people, this is what I focus on. This is a real important part because asset income and portfolio income is really important. And I say that because, a lot of times, if you're talking to somebody in the corporate world, they're going to think, well, this is a big drop in income coming over to Shaklee. Well, it might be at first. However, what you really need to consider is the rule of 200, because if you can build up a Shaklee income of, let's say, $10,000 a month, and if you multiply that by 200, it's really a $2 million asset that you're sitting on. It's not just a $10,000 monthly income, because, a lot of corporate folks might say, well, I make 5 times that amount of monthly income. Well, that might be the case, but what happens if, your company has a management change? What happens if you have, for some reason, you fall out of favor with a company and all of a sudden your job is gone? Then your monthly income is zero. And I saw that happen to a lot of my friends in the business world where, they had a high income, but then all of a sudden their monthly income dropped to zero. And then no longer, did they feel so good about that corporate job. There was not the security that there used to be. And so when I look at what a Shaklee asset income means, I think of, geometric progression, 4, 16, 64, 256, and how you can build a vast network and not do all the work yourself, because it really compounds. And I think of compounding in the investment world, because as you build your assets in your investment portfolio, it compounds over time. But I really think your health compounds over time too. And we see that over and over in Shaklee. There's a lot of examples like Dean Smith, a 97-year-old world record holder in crew. He has really benefited from compounding health, just like, the best investors in the world enjoy compounding investing. There's also tax advantages. And this was highlighted recently in Men in Shaklee, which is a great new group on Wednesday nights we meet. And if you can really utilize all the advantages of the tax breaks in your business, which in Shaklee, there are numerous, many more write-offs here than in my former business. And so one of the things I had to learn, I had to kind of reinvent myself a little bit, because my past world, I became, kind of known in my circle of friends and family as the spine expert. If somebody needed orthopedic surgery, they'd call me and say, Scott, who should I go see for, orthopedic surgery? I need my knee replaced, my hip replaced, or a spinal fusion. Because I was in the operating room every day, I knew who the good, the bad, and the ugly were to go to. And so when I moved into Shaklee a few years ago, people were asking me like, hey, I heard you made a career change. What happened? I said, well, I sold my medical business. Now I'm in a new business, health and wellness business. And I'd always taken the products, but but now it was my business. And so they were curious what I was doing. I said, well, I'm in health and wellness. They said, really? With who? Who do you work for? I said, well, it's a company called Shackley. Are you familiar with Shackley? And they'd say, no, what is Shackley? So I started to think about, well, how do I answer that question? Because it kept coming up over and over again. Well, here are some of my answers. It's a program that turns sick care into well care. It's a way to earn extra money on your own terms. It's a personal development program with a comp plan attached. It's a great tax write-off. It's an ideal opportunity for entrepreneurs. It's a company with deep purpose and meaning that you can trust. It democratizes entrepreneurship. It's sports nutrition for elite athletes and weekend warriors. It's the most clinically proven wellness company in the world, the best health insurance ever created, prevention versus treatment. It's fun and adventurous. It's freedom from corporate America for sure. I love that. And it's also the best emergency fund program ever. Do you know that 40% of people during COVID had to access their emergency funds, and 1/3 of those people used their entire emergency fund? So it's a great way to do that. It's also great for weekend warriors. We have a lot of Olympic athletes that take Shackley, which I tell all my friends, if it's good enough for Olympic athletes, it works. It's good enough for you. And so a lot of my buddies play golf, and now I have the flexibility that I can go to Scotland. Like this picture on the left was at Turnberry in Scotland, where I went with 8 guys, and last week we did a meeting in the Carolinas. I met up with an old friend in Charlotte. We played Sedgefield Country Club, which is on the PGA Tour, and I play ice hockey with my buddies still to this day. And so I really think that's a great aspect of Shackley because of all the freedom and flexibility it provides. Now, one thing I noticed in my medical career was how much surgery people were getting and how much prescription drug medication usage there is. And I recently came upon this graph, which shows per capita spending on prescription drugs in the US versus these other countries. And I mean, you can just look at this, and it's amazing that Australia uses 1/3 of the prescription drugs the US does. And so the U.S. Unfortunately it is looking for a quick fix on a lot of things. And with Shackley, we can provide people with health before they get into a situation where they need drugs. And I think that's a real powerful aspect of the Landmark Health Study, which we know the Landmark 2 proved that, if you're in Shackley, your average medication, if you're over 60, is only 0.5. Half a medication versus 6+ medications for the average public over 60. So, would you rather take less than 1 medication or over 6? And with Shackley, we can really impact that. The other thing, that really I think is the most important thing for me is dreams. I saw this with my mom and dad. I see this with a lot of Shackley people, that they live the life of their dreams. And this slide pretty much says it all. As Alan alluded to, in order for me, who lives north of Boston, to get into surgery by 7 a.m., I had to leave my house at 5:15. So I woke up at 5, took a shower, threw on my scrubs, left the house by 5:15, got into Boston by 6, and I was in surgery by 6:30. Now, that was in the morning. In the afternoon, there's no way to avoid this rush hour traffic. And there's about 7 million people living in Massachusetts, and the vast majority of them live in Boston or in the metropolitan area and are somewhere, in this mess of torture called rush hour traffic in Boston. And that's a mild form of torture any way you slice it. The Atlantic Ocean is on the east, and so there's only 3 ways to access that city. And I would get stuck in this traffic for hours upon hours. And now look over to the left. Which one of those serene scenes would you rather live? Well, now if I go to Florida in the wintertime, I can run my Shackley business from this boardwalk. literally, that is the life of dreams right there. And this business, we can run from anywhere in the world that there's a Wi-Fi signal, and that's a really great thing. And so recently, last week, I was looking at YouTube, and I was looking at different speakers. I came across this guy, Graham Weaver. He's a professor at the Stanford Business School, and he's got this YouTube video called The Last Lecture Series. Apparently at Stanford Business School, the last lecture is a big deal, and they choose the professor that the students want. And he gave this talk on how to live an asymmetric life. And it's a real interesting talk. It doesn't take long. It's about 40 minutes on YouTube. And he talks about this graph here on the left. And he said, in life, this is what life is all about. You improve, and then something changes in your life, and you have to change gears a little bit. And before you make the transition into your new life, you go down a little bit. And maybe this is starting a new job. Maybe it's starting a new relationship, but then you improve again. And then once you go back up to the peak and some other transition happens in your life, you go down a little bit. And once you go down, you go back up once you work on your craft or your relationship. And then each time you go down, it's a little smaller dip, because see, these dips, they get a little smaller each time. And this is what life is all about, because, we're all going to have falls. We're all going to make mistakes, but each time we get up and we try to improve on our craft. And again, this might apply to some of you. Maybe you switched jobs, maybe you had a new relationship, but I thought this was really true. And he said in his talk, how do you build the asymmetric life? He said, you got to do hard work. There's no replacement for hard work. Secondly, you have to do your work. You have to do something you love. 3, you have to do it for decades in order to get really good at it. And that's kind of like Malcolm Gladwell's, Outliers book, 10,000 hours. You do it for decades and you get really good at it. And he said, you have to write your own story. And he said, he learned this from an executive coach. You have to write your own story 5 years out, write your story and make it about dreams. And he said, I don't want to hear about the how. The how is the killer of all dreams. I want you just to write your story and make it your dream. And then it will come to fruition. And so I thought that was a great talk. And when I think about the asymmetric life that he talked about, I thought about Rick Seymour's slide. And this is a busy slide. I don't want you to focus on this whole slide. I just want you to look at this left column. I highlighted it in yellow. It's the 5th one down, initial investment. Now, if you buy a franchise, like a lot of my friends have done, you pay anywhere from $40,000 to $2.5 million. That is a big, big nut. That's an upfront nut that you are risking some serious family money if you're going to do that. If you go into retail, if you go into service, a startup. So a lot of these cost big money. Many of my surgeon friends had hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. Law school, the same thing. And then if you look over here on the right column, Shackley, it's $49. Now, if you're thinking the asymmetric investment, the biggest upside for the least amount of downside, there is just no comparison between a $49 investment to a $2 million investment. If you were to buy, let's say a Dunkin' Donuts or something along those lines. And so there's a lot more to this slide, but I really just wanted to focus on that one thing, because that kind of highlights the asymmetric investment that Shackley allows. And there's a lot of other things on here that are interesting that I found. But anyway, that was the one thing I wanted to highlight. And so I just want to close by reading you the Steve Jobs quote here. My model for business is the Beatles. There were 4 guys who kept each other's kind of negative tendencies in check. They balanced each other, and the total was greater than the sum of the parts. And that's how I see business. Great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. And that's the great thing about these groups like OPA and all the other teams that we have, is we all collaborate together, and that makes us much more effective and powerful when we bring new people into our businesses, because they want to feel the energy, they want to feel the passion that people have. And so with that, Alan, that's all I have. Thank you very much. This is a quick picture of my family. We went to the Amalfi Coast in Italy this past summer before they scooted off to college. This is my son, Nicholas. He's a junior at Boston College. Charlie's a sophomore at Northeastern. And this is in front of the Vatican in Rome on the right. And so with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments. Thank you.
That was great.
Trying to get off of mute. Wow, that was really spectacular. And as you said, Scott, let me ask everybody, are there any questions? I've got a couple here, but you have questions? Why don't you just say who you are and ask Scott your question? If nobody's going to jump in, I'm going to ask mine. So Scott, that book, whatever we call it, by Graham Weaver, or YouTube, I can't wait to see that in person. But when you bring somebody in to the Shackley business, this is like two-pronged question.
Yep.
Are there any books that you recommend for them? Question part one. Question part two. And what are your favorite 2 to 4 books?
Yeah, so if I'm bringing somebody in, I'll introduce them to the 4-Year Career book by Richard Brooke, and I like Mach 2 by Richard Brooke because I think it's a real easy read, less than an hour, and it also highlights the important business asset income discussions that kind of triggered my mind when I read it. I had no idea that the network marketing business was worth as much as it is until I read that book. And I grew up with the business, so if I didn't realize it, I'm guessing that people outside the business probably don't realize it. And then another book that I read, I like Think and Grow Rich by that's the classic investment book. I have it right here. It's by Napoleon Hill. It's like a staple. I had my son read this. He's a finance major at Boston College. He's going to Wall Street this summer. And that's a classic investing book. And then I also like Bold. There's a guy named Peter Diamandis. He's a coach to Silicon Valley executives, and he spoke at one of our medical conferences. And he's got a book called Bold, B-O-L-D. And Peter Diamandis, he talks about exponential thinking and growing 10x versus 10%. So few of the books I like.
So there you have a master coordinator giving you 4 good books. And it's very interesting. I never asked this question of Scott, but I've read all those books. I'm in the process of reading Bold, and I've read the other ones. So with a way to become master coordinator, read these books. Isn't that something? That's really something, Scott. Thank you. Anybody else got a question or 2 or 3 you want to ask of Scott? Okay, Mike. Okay, my dear.
So Scott, beautiful job, great information, great presentation. Thank you so much. I have a question though. When you were talking to people today about Shackley, obviously you came from a different position, already being a second generation. How do you present it to them to make them realize that, because you stepped into it, so to speak, and that would not be their case. So how do you handle that transition with them?
Yeah, so when I talk to people in Shackley, I do not bring up the fact that I'm a second generation Shackley person. I leave that out of it. At some point down the road, I might bring it up, but I don't want them to think that I don't know the steps necessary to build the business. So I'll just talk to them about how great the products are, how great the opportunity is. I'll offer them some programs, like you can come to free weekly meetings, monthly meetings. We have some great leadership coaching, and I'll just talk about the business like that. I really don't need to bring up the fact that I'm a second generation. That's really kind of a moot point. At some point down the road, I certainly don't hide it, but it's not that I accentuate that,
Right.
because it's not necessary to do that.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else got a question or two? Okay, Lou, go right ahead. Lou Lyon.
Wonderful presentation, Scott. It's great. Question: have you been able to go to any of your colleagues that you worked with to talk to them about the business opportunity or the products?
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of them, and I have a group of friends that are pretty successful business people. I have a lot of surgeons that I know that run busy medical practices, but a lot of these folks, they're full stream in their career, and I'm of the age that a lot of folks my age are retiring, actually. So they're not necessarily looking for another career, because most of my friends in my age group are actually retiring. And so I tried to retire when I sold my business 3 years ago. I tried to retire and I was bored to tears. I played golf every day and I realized, wow, like this is all there is, just playing golf. And all these guys were grumpy old guys and they were not happy. And I'm like, I can't do this. So that's really when I went, I got serious about Shackley, because I didn't want to live, the next 40 years being just kind of like an old grumpy guy. So basically everybody that I know in my group of friends, they know what I do. I don't push it on them, but I do let them know that if they want to feel better, that I have some really good solutions for that. And so, some of them take the products, and then, if a life situation is dealt to them in their business, I have that option. I've spoken to them about the business opportunity. And so I would say more people that I meet are more of my opportunity, the Shackley opportunity, than my group of friends, because most of my friends are pretty established business people that they already have their income in line. And so I would say my prospects are more the people that I meet. I might meet them at the gym. I might meet them in an Uber, or a business that's working on my house. Somebody that's in business that I think is like an enterprising individual that has like a curiosity in their eye. I would say that's more my target market than my friends and colleagues in my former business. That's kind of how I approach it right now. But that's a good question.
Thank you, Lou. Anyone else? Okay, while you're thinking, I got another one. If you're talking to somebody about products, Scott, what's your go-to suggestion for products for somebody?
Yeah, what I share with everybody is the Meology link. So I just go to my website and I copy my Meology link and I email it to anybody that has an interest. So if I'm casually in a conversation with someone and they like the idea of feeling better or getting healthy or losing weight, I just share Meology with them. And what's great about that is they take the quiz and they order the products, and I just get an email that says, your friend has ordered Meology. And I've done that with several people in my BNI networking group, my friends. And I think that's a nice way of sharing it with people, because I'm not making any suggestions on what to take. I'm letting the Meology assessment, which is based on the landmark study, which is based on an algorithm. I find it's a professional way to present Shackley nutrition to somebody without me telling them what to take. I'm fine telling them, just take vitalizer and protein. I think that's great for anybody, but the meology I feel like is a more sophisticated way of presenting it.
Okay, terrific. Very good.
I have a question.
Yes, who's that?
This is Tammy.
Hi, Tammy Taylor. Go right ahead.
Hello, Tammy.
So, Scott, you teach the 50K project a whole lot, and I have no idea what doctors make a month, but do many doctors make 50,000 a month?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, most surgeon friends of mine make more than that. 50,000 is certainly a good income. I'd say most of them that I know were making between 50,000 and 200,000 a month was probably the going rate. But the $50,000 project is certainly, I think, a great way to present that. So yeah, I think that's a very appealing thing, and that should appeal to anybody. And it's not even so much the monthly income as it's the asset income, because if you multiply 50,000 times 200, it's a big number. I think that's the way to present it more than the monthly income, because the monthly income in Shaklee is often going to be less than what somebody in a high income earning capacity makes. So I don't focus on the monthly income. I focus on the asset income, because the monthly income can come to a screeching halt immediately. It can come to a halt. And I know that because I've seen it, and I've seen it time and time again. I had a surgeon friend of mine that went through a bad divorce. He stopped working for about 6 months. His income went to zero overnight while he was trying to sort out his family situation. And it was probably a result of him working all the time. Like he was a workaholic. He never stopped. He operated around the clock every day, and I never saw his family. And he lost his wife and 4 kids as a result of that. And unfortunately, they don't talk to him to this day. And so that was a very painful loss for him. And you wouldn't want anybody to go through that. And so I really focus on, the 50K project, I think, is a really cool way to present our opportunity. But I even focus more on the asset income rather than monthly income.
Okay, so
does that answer your question, Tammy?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
So here's a test question for everybody. Ready? What's the asset value of that $50,000 a month? What is the number?
Yep, that's a big number.
Come on, somebody come up with it.
No idea.
Somebody give me a guess.
Is it 10 million?
10 million.
Yep,
10 million.
you got it.
You got it.
10 million.
That's a pretty healthy number, wouldn't you say?
And so that surgeon Tammy's asking about, they may not be impressed with the monthly income, but if you said, how would you like a $10 million asset? I find very few of them would turn their noses up at that.
That's right. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned BNI. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I joined the BNI group up here in New Hampshire, and again, if you look at Graham Weaver's graph, I was an expert in medical device sales. I had spent so many hours in surgery. I knew how to take a surgeon through a complete spine surgery from start to finish. But I don't have that same expertise in Shaklee because I haven't spent as much time here. So I needed to relearn some skills and, work on my craft. And so I thought, well, I should try to join a networking organization. So I heard about this BNI networking group. I'd never heard of BNI before in my life. But in this industry, I know people use these networking organizations. So I decided to try it. So I joined that, and I thought that was a pretty effective way to kind of build my network and yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I liked it.
Terrific.
Yeah. Lou, did you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. I was in ophthalmic pharmaceutical sales, which was nothing what you're compared to.
Oh, no, that's not true.
No, 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 no,
I
no,
know
no.
ophthalmic reps.
No, what I'm saying is we didn't make that kind of money, and the surgeons didn't make that kind of money. But so my question is, the surgeons who you know, even if they made $50,000 a month, don't they pay a real hefty tax?
Well, not only do they pay a hefty tax, but they pay incredible malpractice insurance rates.
Mm-hmm.
And, even for myself, I paid $10,000 a year in errors and omissions insurance if I was sued, because, the surgeon can be sued, but so can the guy in the operating room who is the consultant. So I had to cover my own butt. But their malpractice is way higher than that. So, not only do they have malpractice insurance, but then they pay an office staff. So their overhead usually ranges between 40 and 50%. And so, let's say, your monthly income is 50,000, but, if your overhead's 25,000, you're really only taking home the other 25. And so the overhead, and that kind of gets back to that Rick Seymour slide of the investment. In Shackley, we don't have any overhead. Like in my medical device team, I had 10 sales reps that worked for me, 2 managers. I had to pay their dental, their health, their vision, their expenses. I mean, I had to pay out the nose for all this stuff. In Shackley, we're all independent contractors, so I don't have to pay people's salaries. I don't have to pay, like, we're on our own. We're independent, which is really incredible when you think about it. We don't have any overhead here. That's a real blessing.
Sure is.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Excellent questions. Thank you all. All right, folks. I think you had a great time tonight from what I see and hear. And in a minute or two, let's take ourselves off of mute and thank Scott. But Scott, thank you so much for sharing tonight. You did a tremendous presentation. The Q&A was terrific. And I know that we're going to see you in the ranks of senior and presidential master down the road in Shackley. So Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Alan.
for the
Thank
invite,
you, Hannah.
Alan and
Enjoyed
Hannah and
Y'all
OPA.
have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate it.
Thanksgiving, yes.
Take care, everyone.
Be well.
Bye.
Night, everyone.